Hi there and welcome to the Explaining History videocast. I'm going to talk a little bit today specifically to history students who are going to be facing some exams in January, and I thought I could take 5-10, hopefully no longer than that, 5-10 minutes to talk a little bit about how you can get the most out of your exam paper and how you can kind of buck the trend, if that's not too kind of gauche a term. So, what are examiners looking for? Well, obviously examiners, and you will have heard this from countless times from your teachers, examiners are looking for you to address the question. The first thing examiners want to see is that you are engaging with the question, engaging with what the question is really asking you, and not answering a question that you have perhaps pre-learned or rehearsed. Now, for most British exam boards, and I can only speak for UK ones here, but I'm guessing that most other exam boards in the English language are probably the same, but check these statistics out. Don't take my word for it completely carte blanche. Most exam boards allot marks in roughly this kind of way. About 40% of the marks go to knowledge and understanding, so knowing the date that Hitler came to power, that sort of thing. And the rest, the other 60% of the marks on an exam are allotted to the ability to argue, to make judgments, to be able to follow a clear line of argument throughout the essay, and to come to a reasoned, substantiated conclusion, and to support what you're saying through evidence. So there are countless students that I talk to who are extremely clever, extremely gifted, extremely able, and who have a wonderful subject knowledge, and they are baffled when they come away with C's and D's, and sometimes worse. And the reason why this has occurred is because they haven't been told by their teachers that whilst knowledge is essential and useful, knowledge is simply the means by which we support the argument. And the students have gone in there and not understood that the argument is king. The argument comes first, and the argument is the most essential feature of the essay. It's the kind of the Fabergé egg that you must protect throughout the essay, if I'm speaking in wild allusions here. Okay, so the simplest way to ensure that there is a coherent line of argument throughout the essay is to start by arguing in the introduction. Now, what I normally show my students, and you can find all of this on my website, explaininghistory.com, is to begin an introduction with kind of 3 components. So I first recommend that you start with a bit of contextualization. You're explaining really a sentence, no more, of where our starting point is. So we'll say we're talking about German unification, and we can say, in 1871, after the Franco-Prussian War, the Kaiser Wilhelm I is crowned as Emperor of the new German Reich. Bang! That's the beauty of that sentence, is it's not controversial. No one's arguing with that. I'm not saying anything that is particularly outlandish or anything that any historian would really take issue with. It just happened. Now, let's assume the question is asking us about why Germany was unified. So I've contextualized it with the first sentence, and then in the second sentence I go on to put forward my theory. I might say it was unified because of war. It might say it was unified because of the failure of previous liberal attempts to unify Germany. I might go on, my line of argument might be that it was already economically unified before it was politically unified, with the Zollverein and all that sort of thing. So there are numerous different lines of argument I can use. What I might also do is cover myself and can say, well, there are multiple reasons for German unification, but of those multiple reasons, say the economic factors are the most important. That might be the strongest stance to take. From then so that's again would be another sentence. So we've got less than 100 words now, and then I can tag on to that. The third aspect of my introduction can be what I would call a methodology. say, I basically tell the examiner how I'm going to show him what I'm going to show him. So I might say, in order to explore this, I'm going to look at factors A, B, and C. Look at economic factors, German politics, and rivalries with Austria, and and tensions with France, something like that. And these are just off the top of my head, by the way, so don't quote these as verbatim or gospel. So what I've done there is I've introduced the introduction. I said, here's where we're starting from. Here's our contextualization. In 1871, by 1871, these things had happened. From there, I'm going to explain why I think they happened. So my line of argument, which is the most important part of the whole essay, is there. And after that, I'm going to explain how I'm going to show this. From there, I can continue the line of argument into the first paragraph, which the first paragraph should reflect one of the things I've said in my methodology about what I'm going to show. And so it should be a good paragraph, should be really a clear point, something I'm arguing. So the Zollverein was an important factor. Okay, the Zollverein was perhaps one of the most important factors: the growth of railways, trade, the ending of customs, the creation of a customs union, the ending of tariffs between German states. Really, really important. Then I'm going to prove it. And this is the kind of thing, if I'm talking about things like trade and economics, there's always statistics to hand that I can prove my argument with. So I can use those I can make a point, support it with evidence, but now we get to where the real marks are, because I'm going to make a judgment. So every paragraph should be a point supported by evidence that comes to a judgment. Now, have you ever been in one of those peculiar situations where somebody who's perhaps not particularly gifted in the art of conversation makes a statement, makes a statement about, I don't know, the price of petrol or the weather or something like that, and says it's 3:30, and then there's always a spaghetti western silence as people go, okay, it's 3:30, so what is the significance of that statement? Well, it's always awkward, and then someone says it's 3:30, therefore we are late, and that is the important bit. That's the important bit of information. That is the judgment that we can extrapolate from the fact. Now, countless students out there will put in a fact in, Bismarck stepped down in 1890. Well, yeah, he did. So what? Well, there's huge significance to that fact. His the prominence of the Kaiser in German foreign policy escalates, and with a whole range of unfortunate circumstances that follow that. You might argue that Bismarck's foreign policy, Bismarck's kind of political system was already falling apart long before the Kaiser's new direction came apart, that kind of thing. But you have to include a judgment, so we can have a point supported by evidence. Bismarck stepped down in 1890. Yeah, he did. I'm sure sometimes you don't even need facts to support that. You can simply move on to the judgment, and the judgment is really saying what the thing I've just said really means within the context of the essay, why this is important, what it implies, what it shows, what it suggests, what we can draw from this, what are the implications of this. Sometimes judgments are, you can put multiple judgments into an essay. So you can make a point, you can support it with evidence, and you can draw out 2 or 3 judgments. And here's where you really start to bulk up your marks, because each of those is worth, really, for most exam boards, absolute gold dust. And you can show that you are really thinking about the kind of the bigger themes within the essay. Okay, so for the rest of the essay, so you're going to continue writing points with paragraphs with point, evidence, judgment. Now, one of the most difficult things to write an essay is obviously the conclusion, and people have all sorts of difficulties with conclusions. They have all sorts of conundrum about them as to what they actually are, what they mean. And the problem that most students have is that there's a temptation to rehash, to say again what it was you were trying to say in the first place, or just to kind of go back through all the evidence and regurgitate it. And this is just, a living death as far as examiners go. It's absolute agony to have to read. So I think one way of thinking about the conclusion is to almost mentally take a step back. So let's say we've been talking about Germany 1871 to 1890. And when we get to the bit where we conclude, it's kind of a moment where we take a step back and look at the evidence that we've discussed and try to determine what the big picture is. What does this all mean? What does this show us? What does this suggest or imply about the whole period? Perhaps it shows us that Germany was never as strong and powerful as we thought, or Germany was never as stable as we thought, or Germany was a far more successful power based on what we can see than historians have implied. And so it's really, that is the essence of the conclusion. And I think conclusions are this one part of the essay that there's not a specific prescribed formula for. It's a thing that develops through practice and it develops through your own personal style. But definitely think about it in terms of a conclusion as a paragraph where the big themes of the essay are discussed and the implications of what has been explored are discussed. It's always good, though not essential in AS and A2 essays, to be able to cite historians. There are certain exam boards where historiography is a key marked factor in what you're doing, and your teachers should be able to make you aware of that if it's an assessment objective. If not, it certainly can't go amiss. Periodically, there are historical debates that are so important to the understanding of the topic matter that if you leave them out, it really does leave a gaping hole in what you're trying to explain. For example, if we're looking at Tudor government, understanding the Elton thesis and the criticisms of the Elton thesis are essential. If we're looking at the Holocaust, it becomes very difficult to talk about the Holocaust in any meaningful way without looking at various historiographies. If we are trying to understand the causes of World War one must really be able to cite the Fisher thesis. So it's always important to, if you've got 3 or 4 topics you're going to be examined on, make sure you understand at least the rudimentary elements of the historiography, how the debate has changed and why it's changed and what essentially the historians have been saying and what strengths and weaknesses there are to those arguments. Now, you can message me down below here if you are stuck at all for any ideas about historiography. Drop me a line, or you can get me at info@explaininghistory.com, and I'll be glad to help you out on that one. Anyway, I'll be posting another couple of things in the next few days on exam technique and just the essential stuff you're going to need to get your head in the right space. So I'll look forward to catching you soon on this video cast, and if I don't, good luck.